Call the budget meeting to order for Monday, April 27th. Take approval of the agenda, please. Councilor Norbury.
Thank you, Mayor. That the April 27th, 2026 Budget Council meeting agenda be adopted as presented.
Seconder, Councilor Noxana. All in favor? Carried. Continuation of the 2026 to 2030 budget package. Recommendation, please. Councilor Noxana.
The council receives the updated 2026 to 2030 budget package for continued discussion.
Seconder, Councilor Bertrand. Any discussion? Call the question. All in favor? Carried. Who'd like to start us off? Ms. Scott, and do we need an overview from staff on anything?
Yes, thank you. I would like to invite Chris Payne from the Fit Financial Group to give council an overview of where we're at, next steps, and processes involved.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Scott, and good evening, Mayor and Council. Pleased to be here with you today. I've got a brief presentation prepared for you. Peter sends his regrets tonight. So sounds like we've made some really good progress. Appreciate the efficiency and scrutiny that Council has put to the financial plan so far. So just want to go over where we are in the process and recommend the next steps in the statutory process. Just give an overview where we are in terms of a summary for your tax increase, your total capital expenditures, et cetera, what we heard from Council. Anything that we changed since the last budget meeting, we'd like to note, so we've done that. And then we'll really look to Council for direction on next steps. So as you recall, in preparing the budget, we first started by rolling over core operating expenses by applying forced growth factors, so cost escalation factors, with the intention of maintaining your existing service levels. And we worked with your senior leadership team to confirm those assumptions and refine them for council presentation and consumption. We solicited the new budget requests, and we took special effort to identify those separately for council consideration through the process. That includes new capital that you haven't seen in the budget prior to this year, as well as new levels of service, and also integrate any council direction that you had throughout last year, because we do see financial planning as an ever moving, as a process that's always being undergone. We've conducted several public presentations with you guys and invited the public for input on it. And then the next step would be bylaw adoption. So here's how the dates have unfolded. We've had a couple operating budget meetings and went through the specific special projects, as well as a couple capital budgets. And we do thank the chair for helping facilitate the discussion through the capital projects and soliciting buy-in from the rest of council. And then so today we're just going to go over any final thoughts. We're going to ask for any final direction in the financial plan budget process, and then hopefully receive direction from council to move forward to first, second, third reading. We're looking at the calendar, just suggesting that May 4th be your first, second, third reading. We also note that you have, it looks like, a committee meeting scheduled for May 11th, so that might be a good idea to have a special meeting for final budget adoptions. Your council's likely aware of the statutory deadline to adopt prior to May 15th. So May 14th is the last day to adopt your financial plan bylaw, as well as your tax rate bylaw. Tax rate bylaw will just fall out as a result of your direction for your financial plan bylaw. And there isn't two normal regular council meetings scheduled, so you'll have to have a special council meeting to meet that statutory deadline. So some of the things that we updated per council direction and observation from the last meeting: the town hall renovation funding was changed. The school fields were deferred by 1 year in the capital budget. The pool dehumidifier project funding source was changed to surplus. And there were some small adjustments made to the wildland fire protective equipment, as well as we changed the fire hall funding source for the first year from debt to surplus. And that's probably something I should have recommended to council early on in the process. So I apologize for that. You recall that, the fire hall project is mainly funded by debt. In order to get to that stage, you may be required to undertake an alternative improvement, or, a referendum or an alternative process. And in doing so, you're probably going to want to have a package of information outlining the scope of what's being proposed by that debt. So in order to do that, you need to do some work up front to prepare the design and information for public consumption. So you're going to need to have a funding source other than debt for the initial stages. So that's why we've switched the funding source initially from debt to surplus. However, we'll just remind council that the entire project will take place with council oversight and with council approval, so it doesn't occur prior to that taking place. New projects were integrated per council direction. Pathway paving on Monkman Way to Speaker Avenue, as well as paving pathway from Hartford Court to the RCMP detachment, and the golf course storage, and then downtown sidewalk right-of-way assessment. So all that included, most of those changes, they had since last meeting, they had no impact on the forecasted tax increase. Still looking at a 5.26% tax increase. We just looked at, what the average or representative assessed value home in Tumbler Ridge is around $215,000 or so. So a 5.26% tax increase would translate to about a $60 municipal tax increase. So just to give you an idea, it's about between $1,100 and $1,200 is a typical municipal tax bill. That doesn't include school tax and the other taxes, but just for general municipals, about $1,100 to $1,200. So a 5.26% increase is about a $60 increase. So just give you an idea what would happen to the typical home if you approved the financial plan as is. So other than that, we're here to answer questions. I can summarize total capital expenditures, total operating expenditures if you at all wish, or answer any specific questions that you have. So thank you very much, and I'll stand by.
Thank you for that. Can I get just clarity in regards to, if you can just go back to the fire hall for 2026, it was in a deficit, but now you're marking it as surplus? Just want to get that correct. That's for the 2026, not 2027 or 28.
Your worship, yeah, that's correct. So the surplus funding for the fire hall, so it was initially debt funded in 2026. We've changed that to surplus, but the remaining years is fully debt funded.
Thank you. Council, questions, comments, motions? Council Bertrand.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Chris, for that rundown there. You had mentioned at the beginning that when you started to put together the budget that you used some cost escalation factors. I'm wondering if you could give a brief description of what you used there.
Ms. Scott.
Yes, thank you. I will ask Chris to provide that information.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you for that question. I can answer generally right now with some specificity, and hopefully that will meet your purposes, but let me know if it doesn't. So generally, we separate the types of expenditures that straddle all different programs into different categories. So the easiest example is salaries and wages, of course, because there's pretty well salaries and wages in every single function. And so that's an easy one. We simply use the collective agreement increases to predict exactly what the wages will be with a full staff complement. And that composes most of your things. Other things like utilities, we can do at a utility by utility basis. Now, when preparing the financial plan, there was a number of utilities that we felt were overfunded. But we were careful to ensure that that was the case. So we actually reduced it as a result. However, if they were funded, if they were not overfunded, we would have increased them by the utility rate increase, for instance. That goes for hydro, that goes for gas and other things. Materials and equipment, we use general CPI around that. And then just trying to think of any other specific cost drivers but none is coming to the top of mind at this moment. But we made sure we looked at every single specific cost driver and found the relevant cost escalation factor for that.
Follow up? Any questions, comments, concerns by council? Council Norbury?
Thank you, Mayor. Just something I picked up on the talking about the fire hall projects listed. I see on page 18 we have 870,000 for fire hall projects. But when I look at the supplementals, I only see a couple of projects that don't add up to that. I apologize, but can we get a breakdown of what's in that 870,000, please?
Ms. Scott?
That is a question, actually, I think maybe the Director of Protective Services can answer better for you.
Thank you, Ms. Scott. Good evening, Mayor and Council. The $870,000 in the budget is solely for the fire hall. So this is going to include our geotechnical, our consulting fees, the site location itself, the determination for electrical and mechanical contractors, and so forth. So it's just it's all part of one project for the fire hall.
Follow up.
Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Scott, can we get clarification in regards to this? Want to make sure, I asked it last time, I think it was different, you told me something different. When it comes to selection of where the fire hall is it already dictated in where that will be?
Again, I'll ask the Director of Protective Services to clarify after I'm done answering the question. I believe that the preferred location was identified. That was the one we would do the additional geotechnical on to make sure it is suitable. But I will ask the Director of Protective Services if he wants to add anything further.
Thank you, Ms. Scott. Mayor and Council, to Councilor Norbury's question, to the Mayor's question. I apologize.
All right.
Where was I going with the last my train of thought? So, the location that we are going to be using, or the location that we would have preferred was the location that went to the Strategic Priorities Fund application. So once we have a budget, we have a budget established for this year. We will be going back. We have yet to hear about from our Strategic Priorities Fund application. But that doesn't mean that we're solely stuck to that area. We can make an amendment to our Strategic Priorities Fund application should we be successful in that. But there were 3 different locations that were actually contained within the feasibility study that was presented before council prior. The preferred one, for obvious reasons, was contained in that funding application.
Okay, thank you. So my understanding of the funding application, council really didn't pick a location. It was kind of put out in front of council that way. It wasn't something that was voted on and motion wasn't made. I don't have an issue with it. It's going to be straightforward. It's not what I'm trying to debate or discuss. But there may be other things that come up in the next few months that we may be unaware of what that looks like, that we could need different access. I just want to make sure that's clear until that gets fleshed out through Safer for Schools Together, School District 59. We need to be, and I just want to make sure that we're able to move. If it was needed there, again, I don't know what that looks like. Nobody, the results are not done. The report has not been submitted. Until we hear that information, we won't know. But in the same aspect, when you look around the community for a fairly large chunk of land, there may be only one suited location. So obviously it's fluent. I guess my question, Ms. Scott, would be, budget's approved May 14th. We're not going to go at this right away. We're going to hold off a little bit, or can we put a motion forward that we do not immediately go and start doing work there?
Again, that's a question I'll ask the Director of Protective Services if he can provide council the answer for.
Thank you, Ms. Scott. Mayor and Council, so I've been giving this some thought as we kind of been going through the budget process and things, and I appreciate where the mayor's coming from and that we need to have some flexibility to this. And, you know, I've kind of tossed around the idea of even forming a committee in terms of providing some future direction to have council involved, some public opinion, a consultant, et cetera. So we will not be on May 14th if it is adopted moving forward when shovels in the ground and having people on the ground. That is something that we are open to as long as we get some traction this year. We can appreciate that there are other concerns.
Okay, and I appreciate that from staff, knowing that it's fairly fluent. I would think that we would have an understanding or maybe this discussion on which way ever it's going to go here by the round end of May, beginning of June. But I just want to make sure that we're open to that. Doesn't mean that's the only selection that could be possibly available. My other question, Ms. Scott, would be library budget and actuals. Again, we've been submitted an awful lot of stuff, but the last sheet that I received did not really have what we budgeted for and where the actuals are. Has that been submitted yet by the library board?
I will ask the Director of Finance if he can provide that information for council.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. I did request additional, draft statements from the library, but they're still within their audit requirements, so they're still working through their final numbers for 2025. So I did reach out, but have not received anything further. That's the last information I got was the preliminary preliminary actuals that you all received.
Okay, I appreciate that. Do we have did they give staff any kind of timeline? Again, we asked for during the delegation, that was one of the questions that were asked to the library board was, and I believe it gets asked every year, and it's no disrespect to the library board. I mean, it's a volunteer board, but I think we've asked for it every year that I've been elected. For budget and then actuals. I mean, some of their numbers in the delegation that were presented didn't make sense. They weren't fluent until we actually see it. Then we can just, it makes sense on if it was spent or if it's still sitting there and stuff like that before we make a decision on their budgeted ask.
Again, I will ask the Director of Finance if the library board had given any indication of when we may expect the audited statements.
Thank you, Ms. Scott. To the Mayor, I just was requested a confirmation of payment to the library for the 2025 numbers on Friday, so I'm assuming they're still within their audit timeline, so that's all I have received in terms of any kind of actuals or final audited figures.
Okay, thank you for that. Councillor Julik.
I did reach out to Ms. Coots today, and they are still waiting for the audited financials. It's not off their radar. There was a couple of hiccups in appointing an auditor this year, which is why they're a little bit later than what they normally would be. So that's why those are outstanding.
Thank you. Anything else from council? Councillor Bertrand?
Thank you, Mayor. Going through the supplemental actuals there, there was some significant discrepancies between total expenses and total revenue. So I'd like to put a motion forward to move the library budget to $450,000 from the request of $469,854.
Seconder on the motion, Councillor Noxana. Discussion. I guess my first comment would be to Councillor Bertrand. Can you just give an explanation on how you came with that number? Just to understand where you're coming from.
Yeah. So I did request more information from the library because the budget approved by the board is incorrect. The grant-specific programs has expenses on the budget but no revenue. So 2025 numbers the expense numbers are inflated by $66,043. As well, the actuals show total revenue from 2025 of $433,314, and the budgeted amount was $569,886. Now, could be a number of different factors there. There could be deferred revenue, could be deferred grant revenue, but it's a $135,000 difference on revenue. And even more so on the expenses. So the request was for just under 470, and the payment last year was 447, 480.
Councilor Bertrand, can I just cut in for just 1 second? Whenever we take a 5-minute recess, I look, everybody's trying to grab, or trying to find their paperwork. If we can get staff to copy that so everybody has it in front of them. So we'll take a 5-minute recess and get that copied so everybody has it.
Yep, no problem. So, the information I requested previously at a previous meeting, in the top section of operating expenses, it says grant specific programs for 66,000 in 2025. That's no problem to record that. However, there isn't any revenue to go along with it. So, in 2025, the operating expenses are inflated by 66,000 as it appears today. So in looking at the supplemental numbers from actuals of 2025, the total operating and capital expenses was budgeted as 569,886 in the middle section there, and the actuals were 425,780. And then down below, the total revenue budgeted at 569,886. The actuals came in at 433,314. So again, the total request last year was 447,480. And looking at the actual numbers and the information I have today, that's where I got the 450 from.
Thank you for that. Councilor Norbury?
Thank you, Mayor. At this point in time, I can't support any change without at least consulting the library first. I can appreciate that, they're having their issues regarding timelines and getting audited financial statements to us. But, we've been down this path before of trying to arbitrarily set the library budget without having the board involved. So I can't support it at this time until we talk to the board about what their operational needs are. And their operational needs are 469,854. And to me, they're within their 5%. They're in line, the same thing that the district across the board is. So I'm happy with the library budget at this time. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilor Jilek?
While I understand that what we're seeing isn't as clear as we would like it to be, I think that that's something that we can work on with Mr. Weather. CFO. What I understand the $66,000 is for is there was a grant that was offered from the province, and so that's in there. That money wasn't necessarily all spent within 2025. So it says grant-specific programs is the 66,000. And so that was some of the special money. Like, so if you look further down where they talk about BC Library Enhancement Grant, so it shows the 48,000 there. And then the 66, like, this is not ideal to be working from is what I'm looking at when we look at the expenses, because it's grant-specific program, 66,000, and then down here it shows the revenue of 48,000. But I do know what I remember, and I would definitely want to get it confirmed with, I don't know what Eclipse is new, so Eclipse is the company that's doing the audit. What they had told us last year when we had the audited financials brought back to us is there was some money that had been received from the province that needed to be spent. And so I believe that they've got, those numbers are within here. When talking to Ms. Coots today, she absolutely recognizes that some of those numbers aren't as clear as they could be. But she did confirm for me that there was an enhancement grant from the province of about $100,000 plus. And so I think that it was just not broken down within the financials in the same way we might expect them otherwise, in that the province, when they bring those monies in, they come at a certain time of year, and then the expenses don't necessarily happen, is what I understood from Ms. Coots. I'm comfortable with the 5% increase because I believe that there are the same kind of increases for the library, the same as there is what we've been seeing municipally, like we're all feeling those cost pressures. And so I'm willing to support their ask. And so I won't be supporting the motion on the floor. I do know as the liaison, I will be advocating for clear communication between the district and the CFO office, as well as what that accounting looks like, so that we're all on the same page, so that we don't have this hiccup next year.
Okay, and just so you know, you're not a liaison, you're a board member, appointed board member by the elected officials. And to me, as the board decides on what they're going to do with the budgets, you would work obviously with your board and then to Ms. Scott. And that would be your direct connection. Just want to make sure that's clear, that it's not just reaching out to Ms. Scott's staff through a board, that it goes through Ms. Scott to make sure that's who needs to have a pulse on it. Any other discussion? I'll make a couple comments. Again, I think, you know, again, we're late in the game here. It's the 27th of April, trying to get first 3 readings done and then approval of a budget. You know, we did have the board come in as a delegation. Again, we've asked for some information to come forward, which seems to be, no disrespect to the board, but it seems like every year we have to ask for the same information. You know, whether that's a timeline on their auditor or whatever. I mean, it's, again, budgeted, and, I mean, we even stated that we didn't need audited financials. We're looking for drafts so we can see where their books are at and where their numbers are at. When I take the increase of 5%, to me, it was just take the number at the bottom from 2025, add 5%, and here we go, and try to flux those numbers to just put them out there to sell it to the elected officials. I mean, labor's gone up 20 grand. So to me, and then they minus something off here to add something here. So to me, again, I think when council sends directive to staff, that's for a municipal budget. We actually have different steps forward when we have a collective agreement in regards to wages. To me, the board and for the library board, the board of directors there do not have that same mandate. Some of our stuff is already preset in as when the elected officials approve QP agreements. As it's a 3-year or 4-year or whatever term that agreement is, we already know what the increase is, wage after year after year. So to me, the difference is if we're just, the district's going to go up by 5%, so we as a board will go up by 5%. You know, to me, this is a board's budget, just like the budget that's in front of us tonight is our budget until it's approved, and then it becomes Ms. Scott's, and away they go to work. My concern is, and I don't disagree with Councilor Norbury, I just don't know if we have the timeline to bring the board back in to get these questions answered. Again, special meetings, I have no problem calling them. My biggest concern is staff not getting the information back from the board in regards to the draft numbers, whatever it is, that we can put the 2 sheets together to see how it flushed apart. I understand being on the board, you may have an idea of the grant in regards to the 66,000 wasn't spent in the 1 year, but it carries forward, and it does come at different times. We see the same thing within the municipality. Yeah, that would be my only concern. I don't know if we have time in regards to trying to ask the board to come in. Again, they're volunteers. I mean, they do a lot of work on behalf of us as elected officials, coming up with a budget and trying to flush it out. I think, we will have another meeting before the readings are called. Hopefully, it sounded like from Councillor Julik being on the board, appointed by council, that we may see him by then. I mean, that's a week. We may have him by then. I understand where Councillor Bertrand has come from in regards to how he's trying to use the numbers to justify either the decrease or what they're trying to increase. But until you have the true facts in front of you, it's really hard to make that decision. And then when I see a board that's obviously appointed by council trying to run the library on our behalf, and their ask is $469,854, and we're saying we'll give you $450. There could be something in there we're not aware of. I read their numbers on their budgeted lines. I mean, and I've gone back and forth. I've gone through the other papers that the preliminary of the 2025 actuals, it doesn't all line up. Again, it's like the district's going to a 5% increase, we're going to a 5% increase, and we'll flux the numbers in there. But that might not be true. It just what it looks like on the paper, but with not having the actuals, it's tough to draw that out. So, Councilor Norbury?
Thank you, Mayor. I mean, we can draw, speculation on what that is, right? Like you mentioned the payroll change. They could be changing services. They could be changing staff. We don't know, right? Like that, and we're not supposed to know that stuff. Like we don't dig into operational. We either support them through their ask, 5%. It's very reasonable. And, Councillor Julik said it, costs are going up. Book prices are going up. Those things are always in American prices, you got to get them here. everything is going up, and they're asking for a very reasonable amount. And I think that we can't be making changes based off of what we need to hear. We have a board there for a reason. We need to be engaging them if that's the case. And I totally respect the library and their desire to have audited financial statements, because that is the true numbers versus actuals, which aren't always completely accurate. So I mean, yeah. It's just unfortunate that the timelines didn't quite line up, but at the end of the day, though, are we happy with the increase? I'm 100% happy.
Thank you. Councillor Hoffman.
Thank you, Mayor. You say it pretty much every year. The board's the fiduciary. We appointed the board. Unless we see something that's really a problem, I tend to want to support the fiduciary that is in place. I understand the concerns, and I have no problem looking at this and having it set up for next year, that if it just ends up being that this financial statements end up showing up around the time that we need to be done, then we need to look at a 2-year layover and really compare and have that ready to go instead of delaying everything for this. I'm in support of the statement of costs are going up. I don't think that the numbers have been matching CPI of 5%, and I see a big chunk of that is in payroll. I don't have a problem with that. We have one major employer plus the town. If those are going up at 5%, I don't have a problem with the board saying 5%. So I'm not saying that's what it is, as you stated, Mayor, but even if that were the case, I don't have a problem with that, because I know that the rates are lower there already. So to a board that decides to try to keep its people caught up, I just flat out wouldn't have an issue with that. So for the 20,000 that we're arguing over, I just don't see the need in this case. Does the library do what I hope that it does? It does more. Just about every year it does more. It'll bring in something through grants. It'll run a great program. Like last year, it was the Dolly Parton thing that I was really impressed that we brought in. Having Service Canada go through it. This isn't an idle group that's just sort of resting on laurels. Every year there seems to be something new. So I'm fully in support of the library.
Thank you. Any other discussion? Okay, the motion is to reduce their budget from their ask from 469 to 854 to 450,000. Going to call the question. All in favor? Opposed? Councillor Julick, Councillor Hoffman, Councillor Norbury, Mayor Kirkcalker opposed. Motion is defeated. Anything else council like to discuss? Councillor Bertrand?
Thank you, Mayor. I'd like to talk a little bit about the ECDEV department. I notice we're looking at adding a new position, a planning position, and for a 2-year program or 2-year tenure, and it is partially grant funded. I'm curious to know what the deliverables are for this new position. What can this person actually get done in 2 years? And what kind of qualifications would we be looking for?
Yeah, I'll go to staff. Just to comment there, I think some of that gets flushed out after the workshop. So I'll take the blame. I was unavailable for a workshop, just whether it was health or whatever. I don't remember the date. So I think what happens with that workshop is, it's a directional ship change. So whether the ship's going straight, we're going to turn it right with that workshop. Some information will come out of that workshop. I haven't taken the workshop. That'll be the kind of the direction that we're asking Ms. Scott to direct ACDEV. And I think that's where we get out of that workshop is what we're looking for. If we decide we're not turning the ship at all, we just keep doing today what you're doing yesterday, then it won't be changed. But I think that's where it flushes out, but I could be wrong, but that's my understanding. I've asked a lot about it, because again, I did miss the first workshop. I've read some background information, but not being engaged about it to deepen some of the insight questions. It makes it tough to see the direction it'll go. Ms. Scott?
Yes, before I ask the Director of Economic and Community Development to provide council with some additional information, Because the economic diversification and resiliency strategy has not been brought forward to council for approval yet, we would have liked for it to have been in front of council before these budget discussions happened. But there are components within that strategy that would require this position. And so if council proceeds with adopting the budget with this position in it, it doesn't mean we're going to go out and fill it right away. We still want council to have the ability to review the economic diversification and resiliency plan to determine if that's the direction you actually want to go. But we do need to have this in the budget if council does approve that strategy and we want to move forward with it. The kind of qualifications we would be looking for is somebody that has a university degree in planning and definitely at least 5 years' experience. But again, I will ask the Director of Economic and Community Development if she has any additional information she'd like to provide.
Thank you, Ms. Scott. Good evening, Mayor and Council. So this planner role could go down a variety of paths, I guess. Like Ms. Scott said, we haven't had a chance to really go through what the recommendations are in the new economic diversification strategy, but really, like, this role is not meant to be a traditional planner focused on processing permits or day-to-day applications, how they are in some municipalities. It would be more of a project-focused role that supports the implementation of council's priorities, specifically in the economic resiliency plan. So the main purpose of the position would be moving some key initiatives forward, particularly around housing, land readiness, investment opportunities. Right now, we have a number of projects underway, but there's limited internal capacity to coordinate them and keep them progressing. So projects that you know of, like the Upper Bench Development Permit Area, the Saddle Club lands, initiatives like the lot expansion pilot, land sale policy update, Rymore subdivision, all of those projects could definitely use some planning experience. It would involve preparing development-ready information and creating clear paths to yes. You'll see in the draft of the economic development strategy, we talk a lot about open front door and being ready when these opportunities arise for investment in the community. In addition, the role could support internal coordination across departments to help ensure we're ready when these opportunities come forward rather than reacting after the fact. We will continue to use consultants for technical studies and specialized work. This role would provide ongoing coordination and follow through that consultants typically don't do. It would ensure there's a consistent internal lead to keep these projects moving. So overall, the role is about making sure that when the opportunity comes, we're ready and putting these plans into real action that we've been working hard on.
Thank you. Follow-up, Councilor Bertrand.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. So at first, I wasn't overly excited about this increase to the budget, but I was thinking about possibly a trade-off of consultant consultant fees for some of our planning projects. So I believe staff did mention that we still will be using consultants for some of the technical stuff, but I'm wondering if we've done a cost-benefit analysis or comparison of, excuse me, what we're going to be paying for a new planning position compared to what we pay for through consultants.
Yeah, I'll go to staff. I would think one thing is that we have an opportunity to apply for a grant if council decides to leave the position in the budget and it's approved. Gives an opportunity for staff to apply for the grant. It's not guaranteed. The difference there with that grant money compared to a consultant, we wouldn't be able to apply for that to be covered through that. Ms. Scott?
Thank you. I will ask again the Director of Economic and Community Development if she has any additional information she can provide in regards to that question.
Thank you, Ms. Scott, Mayor and Council. There's such a variety of projects that we would like this potential person to work on that they haven't all been costed individually. One was brought forward at a previous budget meeting for a specific project. That specific project does require engineering. They're two different roles. So we don't have a specific cost-benefit analysis just because the scope is still unknown, I would say, until we have that economic diversification strategy adopted and can really look at what the work plan is going to be for economic development over the next 5 years. It's something that we could go down that road when we get there, but.
Thank you. Follow-up, Councillor Bertrand?
Yeah, thank you. Just quickly, I do appreciate that. Obviously, engineering is different than planning, and we are still going to need to use consultants for that. But I do see, or I do foresee a possible savings in consultant fees with having this planner here. So with that, I can support the request for increase. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other discussion, comments, concerns by council? Councillor Julik?
I noticed that we have the golf cart storage and covered driving range facility in our package today. And I know at our last meeting, we discussed whether or not, so I guess maybe what I'm looking for is, this still would come in, it's going under surplus general, for the funding source. And, I understand that the idea is if we could get funding the same as we have on our, and so my understanding is it's there in case we get the funding for the full amount. And so my question is, though, if we have that listed, does it just sit there like it has the spray park? And then do those numbers become stale and that kind of thing? And because I'm not in, and I fully will admit I'm not in favor of the project as it has appeared before us now. So just getting some clarification about what that looks like within our budget. And so it is on page 41 of 74 of our package.
Yeah, so it's grant dependent, I guess, just like the splash park, which can be brought forward at other years if it is not successful through grants. I'll let staff speak to it. My understanding, some of the research staff has done, there is some grant specifics that are available for that. Again, you have to wait for approval, but again, if it's not in the budget, staff cannot apply for those grants. It was no different, not to get off the top, but no different in the direction of the fire hall. They couldn't do that grant application, which is up to $7 million, without it being in a budget. Ms. Scott?
Yeah, it was the motion of council to add it into the budget being grant dependent, and with council to discuss it with the public at Let's Talk to see what the public's thoughts were.
Thank you. Philip, you're good? Anything else from council? Ms. Scott, if you can, I'm going to say this here. Okay, this is no offense, and I'm not blaming anybody Pacific, but the active budget is not very forthcoming. Can you just update council? I know we talked about it in the last meeting in regards to grant writer, and then I was told that we did increase grant writing. Do we know what the increase is? I know previous years it seemed like we didn't have enough. Our grant writer was telling some of our non-for-profits organizations, and obviously they weren't writing for the district anymore as well, but they were done the grant money like in October, sometimes sooner. And I was just wondering what our increase is this year for that great grant writer. And again, I'm not blaming anybody for how it's listed in the budget. It's just not clear.
Yeah, and perhaps in some of the earlier information council got, there might have been a bigger breakdown in the specifics of the operating, but I will ask the Director of Economic and Community Development if she can provide council with information on what we have budgeted for grant writer for 2026.
Thank you for that.
Thank you, Ms. Scott. Mayor and Council, this year we asked to increase the budget from $14,000 to $20,000. Every year, $8,000 of the grant writing budget is covered by NDIT. That's their maximum matching. The minimum that the district can put in is $6,000. So we have previously just done the minimum at $14,000. I've requested an additional $6,000 to bump it up to a total of $20,000.
Okay, I guess, Ms. Scott, my question was, obviously that's coming from staff. Is that sufficient? I know we're well aware of seeing it online and the amount of grants that the grant writers have already filled out, and many grants that have already been approved. Do we look like in 2026 we're going to run out of grant writer time?
Again, that's a question I'll ask the Director of Economic and Community Development if she has a pulse on where the grant writers are at so far in 2026.
Thank you, Ms. Scott. Just a quick overview on applications to date. So since they started in late January, over 35 applications have been submitted on behalf of 8 local organizations, totaling approximately $433,000, with over $200,000 secured or approved to date, with additional funding pending. Since the events in February, the demand for services has significantly grown and opportunities for grants have grown, so that is why they've been incredibly busy for the last couple of months. They do have the capacity to take on more. We ask them to prioritize nonprofit organizations, but in past years, the last couple of years, the district has utilized them as well. I do foresee that they will max out their budget again this year. We can ask them to, you know, kind of pick and choose who they're grant writing for the rest of the year to try to make it last. But just in my feelings of how much work that they've done so far this year, I could see us running out early.
Okay, thank you for that. Not to put staff on the spot, Ms. Scott, can we get an idea? We think we may run out early. Do we have are we looking September, October again? And I'd hate to give direction that we ask a grant writer that's already wrote up to 433 grand in grants, approved for over 200. Hey, start picking and choosing what we're writing for grants. No, let's get at it. To me, if we can, don't take me wrong, that's provincial and federal tax dollars. But if there's other grants out there, I'd hate to tell or ask our grant writers to start selecting what individuals we're going to write grants for. Our community should be going after every grant available that can help these non-for-profits or organizations.
So again, that's a question I'll ask the Director of Economic and Community Development, if she can provide council with any kind of timeline when we think that budget may be fully expended, and maybe additionally, if she has any thoughts on if it should be increased for 26 and by how much.
Thank you for that.
Thank you, Ms. Scott. It would be really hard for me to pick a date when they're going to run out. We can kind of control that depending on if we see that we are running out of money. The way that we wrote the contract this year with them is specific to what we knew was approved in the 2024 to 2029 financial plan, and then contingent on NDIT funding, and then contingent on our budget being approved. They have maxed out to what they're at right now. I don't want them to pause if possible. For an amount, I would love to see an extra $10,000 added to it if it can. The return on investment that we're seeing from them is pretty extraordinary. So that's completely council's decision. But yeah, I definitely don't think that we're going to make it till December on the budget that we have.
Okay, thank you for that. Look at the light bar light up now. Ms. Scott, my question would be, how did we increase by the 6K? Is that a surplus, a taxation? Do we know?
I believe it was taxation, but that might be a question for Chris from the FIT team.
Okay.
Your worship, that's correct.
So if this is I understand we're paying somebody for time, labor, but because to me it almost seems like it's a different thing. We're not hiring an individual onto our staff or onto your staff, but it's like an outside agency. Are we able to use surplus or the community whatever? I can't remember. Does anybody remember that one is community growth fund? If there's any dollars left in that to up this, just to me, I have an idea of a number. I know council has other questions. I'd rather increase it a little bit more than what's been asked or suggested, just so that we can have a pulse on it for 2026 leading into 2027. Again, if we have organizations that are going to be coming forward and all of a sudden we don't have enough dollars in the bank to be able to help rate those grants, I don't want to see that. I think we should be driving for every grant the district can get, but also for the non-for-profit societies. Be just curious, can we use surplus instead of taxation?
Yes, I believe we could use surplus, but again, I will ask Chris from the FIT team to confirm that.
Your worship, yeah, we can use surplus, and we can either use surplus for the incremental increase that's being requested or for the base budget. It looks like the incremental increase, do correct me if I'm wrong, is about $6,000.
Yeah, that's the ask for this year, but I plan on changing that. And the reason I ask, coming out of surplus, and, you know, and I'll be honest, I'm very adamant about if we're gonna add positions or whatever, it's taxation. So myself, it's up to the rest of council's elected officials, but I have to explain to the taxpayer why I'm in favor of adding a position. To me, this is a different scenario. This is somebody that is helping all the organizations within our community, but also the district if budget allows. I'm going to put a motion on the floor, and I apologize if staff or council has buttons on. I'm going to put a motion on the floor that we increase the grant writing to do I have to do the 6,000 too, or that's automatically in our budget?
The motion could be to increase it by a further.
Okay, so my motion is to increase it further by $20,000 coming from surplus. If we could take a seconder. Councillor Noxena, discussion. Councillor Hoffman, then Councillor Noxena.
Thank you, Mayor. Didn't want to steal your thunder, so I'm glad you threw a motion down. But I was planning on going higher. As you stated, that they were rationing, and the rationing still ran out 2/3, 3/4 through the year. So I wouldn't mind seeing some surplus or some not spending their whole budget this year just to make sure that they have access to even more. The returns are, as stated, incredible. If we've already gotten 200,000 in grant return, and I realize it's not a straight, we put out so much grant and we get back, that there is a lot more fluctuation in it. But grant money is a nice boost for whatever organization gets it, for them to be productive and do it. I definitely would support any higher number, but I would honestly go any higher. I would honestly go higher.
Yeah, and I'll go to Councillor Noxena in a second. The reason I increased it by $20,000, it's double the budget. So if we have rent out previously at 14,000, staff figured within their budget, they needed to increase it, try to extend it by a month or maybe 2 months, depends when they ended last year. I think this gives double, and I mean, be honest, if we hear that they're getting close to the end of it, I think they need to bring it back to the elected officials. Councillor Noxena?
Thank you. I'm glad that you picked a bigger number because I'm interested to see where this goes. If they run out, I'd love to have that conversation then. If they don't, it kind of gives us an idea of what we need to allocate for next year. These grant writers or this grant writer position is something that comes up regularly with nonprofits. The return on investment really is valuable, and the time it saves our volunteers searching out and applying for grants is definitely worth it.
Yeah, I appreciate that, and I appreciate your comments. I mean, I just look at it, you know, right now, staff is asking for a total of 20K, six grand increase from the previous years. I'm asking for another 20K, which is 40K total. They've already received over $200,000 of approved grants. It's already paid for itself. It's a win-win for any organization. Any other discussion? Okay, call the question on the motion. All in favor? Carried. Can we get a recess? Yeah, take a 5-minute recess. All right, any other items council would like to discuss, comment on, bring forward? Council Bertrand?
Thank you, Mayor. I'm looking at a project that's been on the books for quite a long time, the connectivity. It's a grant project. I seem to remember this 4 years ago. I'm just curious if anything has happened on there and if it needs to be on this project list.
Yeah, sure what I want to say here, careful. There is certain things on that concept that are still in camera. There's some processes that the municipality's working on to move that project forward. I'm just not sure where it sits. That's why it's there. I think as that progresses and we get some information back, I think that's where that connectivity amount comes into. I'm not sure if Ms. Scott can add anything else to it, but.
No, there's not really anything else I can add at this time.
Yeah, thank you. I'm just wondering if it's still relevant. You know, it's a large amount on our special project list. Dropping that by $2 million would significantly affect it. It is approved already, but I'm just curious if it's still relevant.
I guess my comments would be, again, as it progresses, as we hear back and possibly progresses, it's going to be needed to finish the looping and internet within the community. But again, like some stuff obviously can't be discussed on the reasoning, but I think that's why it's there. Councilor Nober?
Thank you, Mayor. I mean, I'd argue that it's still relevant today. You know, some of the work that's being done is slow, and you know, it's quietly debating some put together facts. You know, like currently our issue is, you know, the PRRD has been working through their connectivity subcommittee, which is now disbanded. But you know, the general issue right now is the connectivity map that's been put forward by an organization, which is incorrect. You know, ultimately, the purpose of this connectivity grant is to have consistent, reliable internet to every door in the home, which we still don't have. You know, you have the option of Starlink, you have the option of Red Creek Telecom, and just today, people are commenting that you know, they've called 2 days ago, haven't gotten response. One person said they called a month ago, they still haven't got response. So I think connectivity today is still very important. Realistically, when you start looking at the opportunities that reliable high-speed internet for our community brings us, is the fact that it brings other workers. Realistically, it comes down to we need to have that loop. There is other projects across the province that may lend us opportunities for a grant this size to bring in alternatives. I don't know if it's my place to say what those particularly are at this time, but there have been mergers in the province, and so it's definitely something that I think we should be keeping on the radar for us because, yeah. Thanks.
Thanks. Any other discussion, comments? Again, we're looking at just doing readings on May 4th. I'm not saying that you can't make decisions on May 4th in regards to budget, but again, it will prevent the full readings. Councillor Julik.
I think for me, after going through it and having, like, just looking at it all, I'm comfortable with what we've been presented. You know, my concern with the capital projects, if we put them off, we're looking at bigger dollars the next year. And so that's why because I understand the part, if we take it out of surplus, then we're not making return on that investment. At the same time, is the return on the investment going to be more than what we would pay if we had to push those projects down the road? Looking through this again, you know, wondering if I'm comfortable with all of the things. I am, and it's mostly because what I see is it's infrastructure programs, or infrastructure, most of it is in here, and those are things that I feel have been talked about over and over, important to our community. Whether it be that the doors are open at the community center, whether it's we turn on our taps and we have clean water, we can flush our toilets. And so I think that this budget takes all of those pieces into consideration. And so I'm comfortable with the budget the way it is now. I appreciate all the conversation we've been able to have. And just wanted to put that out there. Like, I'm not saying that I'm closed-minded to anything else that comes forward. I'm just saying that I think that our team here at the district did a good job in going through their departments and making sure they were thoughtful in what they brought to council. So while there's a little bit of sticker shock for me, I also understand the consequences if some of these projects don't move forward.
Thank you. Councilor Bertrand.
Thank you, Mayor. So from what I read here, we are planning to use 9.7 million in surplus this year and replenish that with 6.8 million in new surplus after the year is finished. So that leaves us with about around $3 million of surplus being used this year. So I'm trying to find ways that we're not using that, but I'm not having much success here. So my last motion, I'd like to motion that we decrease the council budget to $350,000 from $408,477.
Seconder. Councilor Julik, discussion. Councilor Noxana.
Thank you. I'm just inquiring as to what part of the council budget you'd like to take out, like what things in our budget you'd like to decrease.
Go ahead.
Yep, sorry.
So I wasn't looking at specifics, I was looking at totals. The council budget last year was budgeted at 338. This is on, well, I guess this is a different page. Let me find a page number here. So it'll be on page 6 of the new agenda, or tonight's agenda, council budget. 2025 budget was 338,110. The actuals were 259,698. So from actuals of 259,698, we've chosen to increase the budget to 408,477. So I'm a little bit confused. We only used 76% of the budget last year, but we're increasing it by 20% again. So I don't feel that that's necessary. That's why I went down to the total of 350. I didn't break it down specifically.
Yep, so some of the increases on council's budget will be the increase to the health task force budget. Some of the increases to travel, because we actually expended our travel in the previous year. We got different information in the 2025 budget. I believe to make our numbers work, we were given not straight information when we started cutting our budget previously in 2025. We didn't have all the information in there, and some of the stuff that it was council paying for was actually elsewhere, and then all of a sudden we were not fully covered. So it actually hindered some of our travel. The health task force again has increased an extra 10,000. I can't remember the other items we've added, but we have added, and that is the reasoning on the increase. Councillor Hoffman, then Councillor Bertrand.
Thank you, Mayor. I know we've had several discussions over the year on the council budget for various things, and the last one being travel, I think that was the biggest one that we were playing with. And I have to say I was comfortable at the time, and I still am, just looking at especially what was going on and being able to have the mayor, for the most part, be able to quickly fly out and engage, really benefited the town. A few $1,000s at a time definitely adds up, but I think that communication, especially with Victoria, has been very valuable. Another aspect of this, seeing our surplus over the years, I would rather over budget and not use it than under budget and have to come back for more. And with that being the case, I am more than comfortable with council initiatives and health task force and travel. I understand it's a significant line item, and I also understand Councillor Bertrand's looking for places to cut, which I can appreciate. But these have proven to be valuable to us in the last year especially, and I wouldn't want to see them cut at this point in time. So I'm not in support of this motion.
Thank you. Councilor Norbury and then Councilor Julik.
Thank you, Mayor. I appreciate Councilor Bertrand trying to find some spots, but realistically, like we cut the budget the previous year and it didn't work out. You know, we went vastly over budget in our travel, and I don't think we had an excessive year of travel this year. Realistically, council needs to get out to these conferences. We need to know what's happening. We need professional development, and realistically, looking at next year, if we cut our travel budget even more, yeah, it would hurt us in our reputation outside of that, and it's going to go up. You know, cost of airfare is going to go shoot through the roof. So cutting even more, I think, would hinder that quite a bit. I think we all need to be cognizant that there are costs associated with conference attendance, and we should be using that moving forward, recognizing the increased costs. So I'm not in favor. Thanks.
Councilor Julik.
I think that I feel like we as council do not, and I speak for myself, so I won't say we as council, I am not as mindful of this budget as what I think I expect our other departments to be as mindful in. We add things to it, whether it's like things that come up, and I understand that those pieces are there. When we only look at council for, let's say we do the $408,000 this year, that doesn't, like, when I say yes to travel, I'm not mindful and go back and look in the budget and say, how much travel have we done this year? And those are not discussions that we have when we approve those travel motions, or like approve the travel for folks. So I'm going to support the motion on the floor because I feel like we could do better. And I agree with Councillor Norbury. There are a lot of things that it's good that we show up to. I also wonder if we could start being more mindful in how many of us go to some of those things. So I am going to support the motion on the floor as it is.
Thanks. Just going to mention a couple of things. I see Ms. Scott has got something to say. We've actually added the Christmas party back into the council budget and onto an amend to make sure we're tracking it. CPI went up this year, so that increase will happen this year. Previous years, even with the motion on the floor, it was missed. So there's that as well that has been added as per policy. Ms. Scott?
Thanks. I just before council voted on the motion, I just wanted to give you a rundown of exactly what you increased, what made up that increase for this year. So part of it did have to do with council remuneration and benefits, and that had to do with your remuneration bylaw and the CPI increase. So that was $5,400. Increased the travel by $15,000, and that was recognizing that we had under budgeted the year before. We increased materials and supplies. That was previously the finance department was paying all of council's expenses there, and so now trying to take that off of finance, and so council actually pays for what their actual expenses are. So we have changed that and added that into council's budget. So that was an additional $2,500. Then both in office equipment and elections, recognizing that this is an elections year. So we've added an extra $10,000 in for the cost of the elections and $12,000 for cost of laptops or whatever council needs following the elections. So that's $22,000 right there. And then, as the mayor had mentioned, taking the staff holiday party at the end of the year out of admin and adding it back into council's expense was $15,000, and then also separating out the medical conference from council initiatives, which was another $10,000. So council's initiatives in previous years were at 35, and council decided this year they wanted to separate those costs out, so there'd be 35 in there for any initiatives that come up throughout the year. So those are all of the things that made up the increase to council's budget this year.
Thank you for that. I did have paper printed because I knew it was changed over. Look at benefits. We offer, if elected officials want to opt in or opt out, that's another cost. So I can't support the motion on the floor. I think as we've seen the increases, council has made those motions and supported in regards to adding the extra money, not only to the health task force, but to the medical conference. It's a 3-year contract with an increase. CPI increase, the Christmas party. Ms. Scott has mentioned the administration part with paper printing and all that. I think it justifies travel. We were under budgeted in the previous year for travel. So, I mean, And I do believe staff does a great job in the previous, the end of last year and this year, showing us where our budget's at when it comes to travel. We see it. So I think there is a way of keeping a pulse on that. I mean, things do come up. I mean, I just went to Victoria, which isn't something that is normally budgeted for. It's not a conference. It was 4 days in Victoria. By booking early before I got in front of council, actually saved dollars into our travel, as well as changing hotels after realizing the increase that week due to CAO and board chair conference that was there. So do I think we have to keep a pulse and be responsible for when we're traveling? 100%. We ask staff to do the same thing. This is taxpayer dollars. But I also think, we talk about an election year. There's money there and possible extra funds added for the laptops if needed. I think it's a fair budget council's put forward, or staff's put forward, with all the recommendations from council. Councillor Julik.
Yeah, I appreciate that breakdown because that definitely looks a little bit different for me. So just to clarify then, the 22,000 for the office equipment and election would come out for the 2027 budget.
Doesn't all come out just in case there's a by-election.
Oh, okay.
Scott?
That would be a discussion for council at the 2027 budget deliberations, but we would still keep some in there, yes.
Any other discussion with the motion on the floor to lower the budget for travel, or for council? Call the question. All in favor? Opposed? Councillor Julia, Councillor Hoffman, Councillor Noxana, Councillor Norbury, Mayor Kirkcalker opposed. Motion is defeated. Anything else from council? Discussion, comments? Again, I am not stating that on May 4th that we can't do a change. This needs to be done before the third reading. I would think, Ms. Scott, that if we make a change to something, it can be rectified on the screen or within FIT or your CFO to have those changes so we can do a third reading the same night?
I am not sure. That's a question I will ask Chris from the FIT team if he can answer for council.
Mr. Chair, it's a bit clunky, but it's possible, so we can be ready to do that if needed.
Okay. I think, just in case there is change, I think it's important that, it's not about rushing the budget. If we figure that there's too many motions that come forward or whatever, we can make a decision then. But if there's just the odd one that doesn't change a whole bunch, then if we can do something like that, I think it helps the process. Councillor Julik.
Yeah, I just wanted to mention, as we're having Let's Talk on Wednesday and getting some feedback from the community, I could see the possibility of some changes coming. So if FIT and staff are comfortable doing some of those on the fly, I think that's great. Otherwise, maybe we want to have a special meeting specific to budget readings and stuff. But that's just a thought putting out there just because of the Let's Talk.
Yeah, it gives an opportunity for residents to definitely come and have a discussion in regards to the budgetary items. Again, I look forward to Let's Talk. I'm there to support the community as a whole. That'd be my comments to that. So. But again, it's not about speeding the process if we think there's too many motions. And I think that's, Ms. Scott could have some direction in there, but I also have a pulse on it. There's too much. We'll just have to call a special meeting and council have to be available for it, Zoom or live. Okay. Any other questions, comments, concerns by council? Okay. Ms. Scott, any emailed in questions? Oh, sorry. Councillor Bertrand.
Just curious on tax rates. Do we do that after the readings or before?
Ms. Scott, it's normally after.
That's a question I'll ask Chris from the FIT team when they plan on bringing forward discussion on tax rates.
Through the mayor, good question. It's a statutory requirement to do your bylaw reading for your tax rates after the financial plan bylaw adoption. Usually the way it'll work is you'll give first three readings to your financial plan bylaw. In the same night, you'll do first three readings for your tax rate bylaw. Then on the second meeting, you'll adopt your financial plan bylaw, and then you'll adopt your tax rate bylaw.
Clear?
Yeah. I think there may be some debate as far as the tax rate settings go. I don't think it's just a matter of putting together a budget and all of a sudden we have tax rates. We have a very specific tax breakdown percentage-wise between our different departments, I guess you could call it. So, yeah, I'm curious on that process.
Scott? I guess I just want to make sure if it's prepared for discussion in regards to tax setting.
So
Rate.
again, I will ask Chris from the FIT team to provide some additional information to council on tax rates.
Thank you. Through the mayor, typically the default tax rate bylaw is prepared to pass on equal tax increases to all property classes. Now, council does have discretion to change the tax burden in tax classes. So if that's the case, we receive direction from council and we make the adjustments accordingly. We are a little bit, running up against the clock in terms of debate around that. But yeah, if there's a special meeting that has been that can be called to bring a resolution to any concerns raised by council, that's something what we can do. Again, it may be possible to amend the bylaw on the fly. It would take some coordination with between the finance department and the director of corporate services as well, and some preparation to make that possible. But yeah, that's usually the process. Is again the default pass along. Uniform tax increases to all tax classes unless council expresses a desire to change the burden within those tax classes.
Ms. Scott, would FIT team be prepared to have a live, it on a live Excel sheet where we can change the tax rate per class, and it changes it on our screen as previous years?
I believe he said they could. It would be a bit clunky. It would have to be a coordination between the finance and corporate departments, but again, I will ask him to clarify that answer.
Yeah, so what I'm looking, it's not even about changing it for all the readings. It's about coming in, having Excel up there. This is the equal amount across all tax rates. All of a sudden, we decided to change it. So if we add more to whatever rate for taxing, we can see the change right away on the screen.
So again, that's a question I'll ask Chris if he can answer for council.
Assuming that's what you're looking for.
Mr. Mayor, certainly we can have a dynamic screen available so that, we can take council direction on the fly. We can show how that shows up on the screen and then how it would show up in the bylaw. The only question I would suggest that we ask the Director of Corporate Services right now is there a requirement to have a static looking bylaw on the agenda? Yes, obviously there is, but is there an ability to change that dynamically through motions and meet the statutory requirements to adopt those bylaw? My understanding is yes, because I believe in my experience, we've done that once before, but I just wanted to ask that question out of abundance for caution.
Ms. Scott?
So I will ask the Director of Corporate Services if she can provide some information for council on that.
Thank you. I don't have this information right now. I believe that we can't do that, but if we can, I will bring this information as soon as possible.
Okay, appreciate that. That's all we can do. Staff has a bit of opportunity, a few days to look into that. And again, I mean, just to council, not sure what people's schedule is like next week. If we don't finish on Monday, I'd be prepared to call a meeting for Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday if needed. Again, we need to make sure the process is prepared. Staff has enough time to finalize everything so that we meet the requirements. And again, not saying that everybody is going to be available in person. Obviously, we can Zoom in if need be, but I just want to make that clear. We have a role and responsibility to play to the residents of this community, and I just think we have to be prepared for it if it doesn't work out on Monday night. Ms. Scott, because there's going to be two agendas that night, I guess we don't have a schedule part in our agenda, but is council free to start at 4 o'clock on Monday? Is there any issue with starting at 4 o'clock by council? Sorry? That's fine, we can cancel pictures. Pictures aren't important right now. 4 o'clock, good? Any issues from anybody? Ms. Scott, I would just ask, how does that look for staff side as well? So, I mean, we might be okay for 4, but we need to make sure staff's okay for 4. And if we're not sure at this point, if it could just be emailed out, that'd be up to you.
I will double check and we can email council, yes. I do believe if council would entertain, the Director of Finance has some additional information you'd like to provide council.
Mayor and Council, I'm just wondering at this point, because Let's Talk is on Wednesday, I'm not sure if there's desire to have like another special meeting after Let's Talk this week, just to go over any potential direction that you may have from Let's Talk, because if we put it off another till next week, that presents another challenge to finalizing the budget and tax rate bylaw. So just putting that out there as a question.
Thank you, Ms. Scott, and your staff for that. I'm not available after Let's Talk. I'm going to be straightforward. Thursday, I'm out of town. I'm available Friday. Councilor Bertrand? Now, is there a better time that works for council? And then we can confirm if it'll be available for staff. 4? 4 work? Friday. Councilor Bertrand? If we can do Friday at 4 o'clock, Ms. Scott, if it does work for staff, just an email later on. Again, I'd like to do earlier, but also it's tough when it's last minute in our schedules. I understand it's a Friday and staff only gets the weekends off, and I don't want to disrespect that, but if it's not needed, and we can not have it, but I apologize that it's a Friday. I mean, I'll be honest, we could also do it Thursday evening. I'm not sure if that works better. It would have to be at 5 o'clock or 5:30, depends how long the PRD meeting goes for, but I can leave the PRD to be back for 5 if Thursday's a better day. Again, I'd hate to take a weekend away from, or have staff here late on a Friday with weekend off. I'm not sure what council thinks. I'm just trying to work every idea through my head. Does it matter to council? Like, how early can you do it?
2, 3?
Ms. Scott, like 2 o'clock working?
I'll have to check with staff.
Okay. So if something like that doesn't work for you, Ron? 3? Okay. If staff figures that doesn't work, then we'll move it to Thursday afternoon or Thursday evening, 5 o'clock. Works? Thursday's available for most or all? In case we need to move it to Thursday. Okay. Yeah, okay. Alrighty. Not that we had scheduled of meetings in the agenda, but that's figured out. Ms. Scott, any emailed in questions?
No.
Any questions from the gallery? Mr. Deely? Nothing? We don't get to see anybody, man. Come on up and ask a question. Let's figure something out. We don't get many people in our gallery.
Blown away by the amount of money you guys are all dealing with.
Take a adjournment. Councilor Norbury.
Thank you, Mayor, that the April 27th, 2026 Budget Council meeting be adjourned.
Seconder, Councilor Noxana, all in favor? Carried.